What's going on, y'all? Episode 6, Let's Be Real podcast. And as y'all can tell, coming at you from a different day today. Decided to switch it up some, one, make the podcast hopefully shorten it down a little bit so we can make it a little bit easier for y'all to listen to, but also just break it up some where we can kind of talk about the talking points from Sunday, from Monday, a little bit earlier in the week. And then that way we can really focus on the games that are coming up. So, um, what we're going to be doing is Wednesday dropping an episode, Saturday dropping an episode. But yeah, so that's kind of what y'all can look forward to. As always, y'all, I'm going to have my wine. I like my red wine. Red wine I got for y'all today is actually going to be the red Sedan. That is from the Redhead Winery. It is a 60-40 Cabernet Shiraz blend. So if you like a little bit drier, a little bit more bold, but still with that fruit flavor, that dark fruit, I definitely would recommend checking it out. That is the Red Sedan from the Redhead Winery. All right, y'all. So we in it, man. We had a ton of good games this last week. Not too many close ones, but I definitely think we learned a lot about a lot of the teams this week. So want to start off with probably what I thought was the best game this week, and that's the Commanders Ravens, right? So just starting off, man, Ravens with another win that they kind of were in control of most of the game. Gave up that late fourth quarter touchdown, and it's one of those things where whenever it's the Ravens and you see that touchdown that kind of brings them in one score towards the end of the game, now you always kind of have to get a little hesitant with Baltimore, right? Where we've seen them have a propensity of letting teams back in games in the fourth quarter. Luckily, they were able to put this one away. Lamar had a pretty good performance. And as far as, just that dynamic duo between him and Derrick Henry, what a luxury it is to have Derrick Henry in that backfield in the fourth quarter of games when it's under that 3-minute mark, because it just seems like he's a guaranteed first down no matter how many people they put in the box. So between him and Lamar being able to run, that just it makes it where it's actually, honestly, it's kind of surprising that they have these late game struggles when they can have so much control over the clock in the fourth quarter with those two players. I also love what they did. I know a few weeks ago we talked about Zay Flowers kind of putting it out there that he was a little bit unhappy. So love them getting him involved right out the gate. First play of the game, big play. And so love what I'm seeing from the Ravens, man. Again, it's like we talked about last week. It's like we continue to talk about with the Ravens, man. It's we see that they have these great regular seasons, but what it's going to come down to for them is what are they going to do in the playoffs? And is Lamar going to have that vintage Lamar playoff where it's his worst game of the year? And so definitely they look a lot scarier. Like I said last week, they look like the scariest team in the league. It's the last team I would want to play in any week. And so we'll see if they can obviously keep it up. I can't see them not keeping it up during the regular season, but again, it's just really going to come down to the playoffs for them. And on the other side of the ball, man, talking about quarterbacks, man, Jaden Daniels he's playing, man. I know it's wasn't one of his best games, but it definitely wasn't a bad game by any means. He's still firmly, I think, in control of that Rookie of the Year race. And just watching him play, man, it's from the pocket. He is so much better than I expected he would be coming out of the draft, because, he has just got total control in the pocket. When he gets out of the pocket, he can make plays. But just what he's able to do for that Washington team, who, like I said, I know I had them as a sleeper pick to win that division, but man, not many people believed in that team, and rightfully so, thought that team was going to finish in third place in the division, because obviously you can't be worse than the Giants. But no, I love what Jaden Daniels doing. Like I said last week, I thought that this could have possibly been one of those games where he maybe had that rookie kind of stumble game. And yeah, like I said, didn't play great, but still put up a great game. And like I said, I still think the Rookie of the Year race at this point, obviously it's still early in the year, but it's looking like it's going to be his to lose. And so, just hope we can keep seeing him kind of continue on what he's doing. And man, speaking of first round rookie quarterbacks, man, Caleb, my man is looking good, man. He's finally kind of caught his stride, and it's great to see because man, some of the throws he can make. He had one to Keenan Allen. If y'all didn't watch the game, that was just one of the most perfectly thrown balls you can throw. And so he's looking like he's going to give Jaden a little bit of run for his money on that. So that rookie of the year race, it's starting to heat up a little bit. Like I said, I think Jaden right now, uh, it's obviously, like I said, it's still early. But if everything continues the way it's going, it's hard for me to see Jaden losing it. But like I said, it just takes 1-2 games, and we're talking about a whole different race now. And so, love seeing what Caleb's doing, man. Finally getting those weapons involved on offense, and so the Bears, man, they're looking like that division is crazy, but they're looking like we might get 3 playoff teams out of that division, which means somebody isn't going to make it. I think that team is going to be the Packers. Obviously, with this week, it doesn't look like it because the Packers, man, they were putting it on the Cardinals. But I can't see the Bears with the talent they got on offense, with Caleb playing like this, and the defense that they have. It is hard for me to see them not in the playoffs this year and not being a scary team in the playoffs. And with a quarterback like Caleb Williams, the talent he has in an NFC that's wide open, I mean, anything can happen. But on the other side of the ball, speaking of number 1 overall picks, Trevor Lawrence, man. I mean, he had an all right game. He's finally starting to string together some games that he looks okay in. But and look, I was very wrong on this. Coming out of college, I thought he was going to be a kind of what we're seeing from Caleb, a guy who just immediately out of college comes in, takes over the game, and it looked like he was getting to that point last year up until the injury. And ever since that injury last year with his ankle, it's just, it's been tough for him and the Jags, man. Um, Obviously, the Jags, they fall to the Bears. 1 win on the year, and it's getting bleak there, man. And I don't know. I can't see a scenario now where they turn it around enough where they can make it to the playoffs. And I had them as a playoff team this year. And so, obviously, with that comes the questions around the head coach. Doug Peterson, who, look, I'll always appreciate Doug. He brought a Super Bowl to the Eagles. But, he's in a tough spot. He came out this week talking about we need to change the culture. And as an athlete, man, and as a coach, if you're talking about changing a culture that you've established, because he's been there, which means the culture that's there is the one you've established. And so, look, I'm not a proponent of anybody getting fired, but if you're talking about needing a change of culture on a team in which you've established the culture, that means you failed. And we've seen Trevor regress as a quarterback, even with these last couple games. But with that kind of talent at quarterback, with the type of moves they made this offseason, obviously they thought they were going to be competing this year. And if you have a head coach who, again, like I said, whether it's his fault or not for the regression of Trevor, whether it's his fault or not for, what that team is doing, you're the one that set the culture. And if you're talking about changing the culture, like I said, it means you failed at your job for these last few years. And so I would say Doug Peterson, man, obviously the Jets beat the Jags to first coach fired of the year, but I need to. He is going to be coaching for his job over these next couple games, and if this continues, I can't see him getting more than a couple weeks before they decide to pull the plug on him. Now, who comes in to fill that position? I don't know what he's going to look like as far as his next moves. I'm not sure as far as who's going to give him another opportunity. My guess is he's probably going to have to go OC somewhere. But yeah, I mean, Doug Peterson, it's a tough spot for him because they really need to start stringing together some wins. And, Trevor is going to be part of that problem because he has not played up to the caliber of talent that he has shown and that he was expected of to since up into this point of the year and even towards the end of last year, which I kind of give him a pass with the injury, but especially this year, you're healthy, you have weapons. I don't think they're, you don't have superstar weapons, but your weapons are good enough that you shouldn't be a 1-win team right now. And I know your defense is bad, but the offense isn't putting up points either. So it's just an all-around bad job by the Jaguars this year. And so obviously we'll see if they turn around. But like I said, I'm not sure I can see that here in the next few weeks, which means inevitably I think Doug Peterson is probably on his way out here in the next few weeks. And so going to switch gears from a coach who might be on his way out to the coach who is already out. So, man, we had the Bills and Jets playing last night. And what I told Joey and I told y'all last week is I considered the Monday night mid-off. And it was all of that we expected. I think Joey's comment was they're going to be playing football. It's a football game. I called it the mid-off, and that's exactly what we got. I think we got a little bit of football in between a lot of flags. So two teams just not coached well. Whenever you have I think they had over 200 yards of penalties between both teams. And that's undisciplined. That's two teams that are not good. Because if you're playing good teams, if you are a good team, that's not something you do. And so obviously the game itself, we had a close game thanks to a couple, flags bringing plays back, kickers missing field goals and extra points. And so I want to start, though, with Josh Allen. And so obviously this year, he was my MVP pick because I thought he was going to have to play Superman this year. And instead, kind of what we're seeing is the Josh Allen we saw at the end of last year. And that's a very conservative Josh Allen. He hasn't thrown a pick this year, being very safe with the football, which in a game like this, I'm okay with. But I think, obviously, the Bills, they're a team that is looking to still be in contention this year. And so I don't think with Josh Allen playing like this, and I think it's a big reason why you don't see them beating any good teams. All their wins are against bad teams, and when they play good teams, they lose. I think the biggest reason is when you have Josh Allen playing conservative like this, it takes away what makes him Josh Allen. He's going to be a guy where you're going to get some of the most spectacular plays, throws, runs you've ever seen. But with that, you have to take the risk with the reward. And that risk is he's going to throw some of the worst interceptions, have the worst fumbles that you've ever seen. But that's what makes him such a dangerous player. And so I think when you look at the Bills this year and the reason they've kind of stuck, like I said, in that kind of mid-tier of NFL teams is with Josh Allen playing this conservative game, this game where it's, hey, we're going to hand the ball off more, we're going to run the ball more. It takes away that dynamic kind of playmaking that made the Bills so dangerous these last couple of years. Now, again, like I said, it might result in Josh Allen costing you a game. And we've seen it before where he goes to try to make a spectacular play and it ends up looking like a peewee football play. But you got to take the good with the bad. And to be at their peak, I think you have to have Josh Allen playing that high risk, high reward football that I thought is what would get him that NFL MVP this year. Luckily for him, it looks like he's got some help on the way, though. I know I had mentioned Amari Cooper as a possible target for maybe the Chiefs, but Bills went ahead. They pulled the trigger after the Davante news, and so Josh Allen's got Amari Cooper coming in. It finally gives him a clear-cut number one receiver. It's tough with Amari, right, because you have a receiver who's getting a little bit older, hasn't had the season that, he's accustomed to having as far as catches, yards, things like that. But how much do you put that on him? How much do you put that on the Browns, right? And having Deshaun Watson as your quarterback. And so with them, it's going to be tough because you don't really know what you're getting with Amari. Now you're taking a big swing with it, and I think this shows. I think kind of coming into the year, everyone thought with the Bills like kind of offloading Stephon Diggs, offloading some of their defensive players, they were kind of doing a soft reset. But I think with the Bills this year, they're looking like, hey, we're 4-2, we can still make a run, and that's what the Amari Cooper deal shows me. And so I love it as far as from a fan of the game. I love it as far as from somebody who wants my take to be right as far as Josh Allen MVP, because it does. It gives him that weapon on the outside, and hopefully we get to see the Amari that we've seen in the past. Pair that with Shakir there, and I think their rookie. I think you guys got a solid receiving core now. And now while Amari's not, top 5, 10 number one receiver in the league, he's still a number one that gives you a guy who can win every play. And so we'll see kind of how the Bills can integrate him and kind of bring him along, what kind of chemistry he can build with Josh Allen as they go through this year. But I think I think it could be good. We'll see what happens. And it just really depends on what kind of what Amari Cooper you're getting, and if it is the Deshaun Watson problem or if it's just age catching up to him. Speaking of age catching up to him, man, other side of the ball, we got the Jets. And so, yeah, we got the Jets, man. Another Jets being the Jets, right? So, excuse me. But look, in vintage Jets fashion, they found a way to lose that game. Aaron Rodgers, man, in vintage Aaron Rodgers fashion, loses the game, gets on the mic afterwards, blames everybody else. So let's just start with the positives for the Jets, right? So one of the things I loved with the Jets last night was we got to see what a real offensive coordinator would look like for the Jets. So we have Hackett. He's taking that step back where he's basically a step above an assistant with the offensive coordinator title. But you got somebody now where they brought in the motion. That's what I had talked about previously is, they were one of the lowest teams as far as pre-snap motion. They tripled how much they did it. So they went from doing it 25% of the plays to 75% of the plays. And you could tell their offense did look a lot better last night. And so their biggest thing now is obviously what do you do with, now that you kind of got the offense clicking, what do you do with your O-line? Because the biggest thing that we saw with the Jets, and it's been a continuous theme this year, is if Rodgers gets the ball out in under 2 seconds, he's pretty good. If he doesn't get the ball out in that 2 seconds, he's usually ending up on the floor. And so obviously, I would have loved to see them go out, maybe try to grab an offensive lineman. That didn't happen. But, the positives out of it is, you finally got a real OC in there. It looks like the offense is clicking a little bit more. You guys are able to run the ball a little bit better. Obviously, you're still the Jets, so you're going to find ways to lose. And but at least that part of it looked better. On the flip side, the downside is, like I said, your offensive line doesn't look like it's going to last more than 2 seconds. And so with that means you got no plays downfield. So obviously you bring in Davante Adams, which we'll talk about here in a second, but what good is that if everything has to be, quick shots? And obviously playing quick shots means you're only getting 3-4 yards a play, which means you drop one, bad throw on one, you're looking at a third and mid, third and long. And to be in third and long every time you're at third down is not a recipe for success in the NFL. So obviously got to figure out something with that O-line and protection for Rodgers. Also, look, I said it last time, I didn't like the firing of Saleh. I thought he was doing his part on defense, and that defense didn't look as good. Still looks like they could use a pass rusher. Hassan Reddick's sitting there. But you're starting to get some injuries in the secondary. Still can't generate a pass rush on a consistent basis. And so, that defense looked a little worse, a lot of penalties. And so while you do have the offense that's starting to maybe click a little, find a little something, you have the defense that looks a little bit worse. And so are you still kind of the same team? Yes, just in a different way. And so with that, let's talk about now, because it's the Jets, because it's Aaron Rodgers, the real storyline is going to be off the football field. And so after the game, obviously Aaron Rodgers throws the interception to end the game, basically end the game for the Jets. And, he gets into the press conference afterwards and, they ask him about the play. And where you would see a true kind of leader at quarterback, and not even a quarterback, where you see guys who are true leaders in sports is, what happened on the play said, oh, miscommunication, but I need to be better. I need to see that. I need to make a better throw. Rodgers, we know his comment is, oh, I thought Mike was going to, he's supposed to run here. That's where I thought he was going to go. So I went to throw the no-look pass. When I saw he wasn't there, I tried to change it, and so I underthrew him. And so it's a constant theme, man. It's a constant theme with Aaron Rodgers. It's, he plays all right this game, or he plays poorly. Game comes down to the end. And this is, if you're the Jets, this is why you bring in an Aaron Rodgers, right? Because you're thinking, okay, we have a dynamic player at quarterback. We should be able to, in a one-score game with the ball and, a few minutes left, this should be where we can have that difference of last season with Zach Wilson. We don't get a win out of that. This season with Aaron Rodgers, we should get a win. And each time he's been presented with that opportunity, he has come up short. And so, we saw 1 week with the kicker miss a kick. He blames the kicker. See it another week, last week where, they get rolled and Salah's out. Now we see this week, blames Mike Williams for running the wrong route. And now rumors are Mike Williams is on the trade block. And so as we move forward, who can Rodgers blame next? Mike Williams is going to be out of there. He's got Lazard there. He's got Garrett Wilson. He's now going to have Davante. So eventually, he's got all his guys there, which is great for him. He's got the comfort. I get it when you're a little bit older. You like the comfortability of knowing who you're working with. But on the flip side, that comes with a whole different thing for Rodgers is there's no one else to blame anymore. It is going to be on you. We all kind of know that defense, even though it's banged up and even though, it's not quite what it was in previous years, it's still a good to very good defense. And now your whole offense is, who you asked for. So moving forward, I don't want to hear, oh, it's this person's fault. It's this person's fault that we didn't win, because it is your team. The Jets have shown, and they've made it very clear that Aaron Rodgers is running the Jets right now. I know Woody Johnson can get on and say he's not, but the moves and the pieces and everything they've brought in show that he very clearly is. And so, moving forward, that's what we need to see. Aaron Rodgers, you got who you want. We got to see wins now, man, because it is on you. And so it being on you, let's talk about Davante, man. So like I said earlier, I don't think wide receiver was kind of that position of need for them. You got Garrett Wilson. I'm sure Garrett Wilson or Davante is going to love playing with each other, because that means when you got a number one corner on the other side, the other one should have a great day. But like we talked about, what good is, having, an advantage at receiver that you can win on if you can't get the ball out unless it's under 2 seconds. Unless you're throwing those quick hits, you can't get the ball out. So while I think Davante, will it help them? Of course. I think Davante is such a good receiver that no matter where he went, he's going to help the team. But that's a whole different question of, is it the best move for the team? which I don't think it is. Like I said, I think the far more pressing issue is O-line because, again, you can't get the ball out, means no explosive plays. And if you can't get explosive plays, then you're not a scary offense, which means you're basically the Jets last year with Zach Wilson. So we'll see, how the kind of dynamic between Rodgers, Lazard, Davante, Garrett Wilson works. We'll see kind of, I would say the biggest thing I want to watch for is kind of what happens with Garrett Wilson because Rodgers has shown that he loves going to Lazard, a guy who he has the comfort with, the reputation with, the rapport with. And so with that, and now Davante coming in, who he's got the same kind of thing with, does that kind of bump Garrett Wilson into a spot where he's not getting all the targets that he's been getting these last couple games? And then how does he feel if he's sitting on a podcast and gets asked a question? So I would say that's probably the big thing I'm going to be watching for is kind of what happens with Garrett Wilson over these next few weeks. We also got to see what kind of Davante we're getting. He's been out for the Raiders with a hamstring, and it's he's got to get healthy. So we'll see what happens with them. I think I would grade that bringing Davante in at maybe a C plus as far as it'll help and how helpful it is. What I won't give the Jets a good grade for is what is going on with Hassan Reddick, man. So obviously you bring in Hassan Reddick, you give up a 3rd round pick for him, and hasn't played at all. And it's a position of need for you. And again, I'll go back to this. Y'all have Aaron Rodgers. Y'all are bringing in Davante. This is clearly a year where you are saying, we are going all in. We need to win now. Your quarterback is 40. And he looks like a quarterback should look at 40. I think everybody gets into it about Brady playing so long, and even Peyton had trouble at the end, but we looked at Brady and said, oh man, he's resetting what it looks like to be a quarterback when it's, he's 101, man. Brady, offseason, everything, regimented, strict on himself. And that's just not Aaron Rodgers, and that's fine. But he's not going to be the player that's going to defy QB age like Brady was because of it. And so with that, now you got the Hassan Reddick situation in a position of need. You don't want to pay him. He's not going to come in. Obviously, his agency dropped him. Might have been the best thing for him because now he's got Drew Rosenhaus as his agent. And obviously, Drew Rosenhaus, one of the biggest agents in sports. And so he's going to get his money somehow. And it was reported today that the Jets allowed him to go out and search for a trade. And so with that, there's a couple things. Right now, if he is traded to the NFC, and I'm going to get to where I think he's going to be going, if he gets traded to the NFC, that 3rd round pick you gave to the Eagles turns into a 2nd round pick. So now you're giving up even more capital. Who knows what you're going to get back, because you're going to be getting back 10 cents on the dollar, because everybody knows they don't have to give up much to get him because of the situation you've put yourself in with him. And so you're looking at arguably giving up a 2nd round pick for a guy who's never going to play for you, maybe getting a later round pick back for him just to salvage a little bit of something. And so, it's a tough spot for the Jets. Like I said, especially when I don't understand what you're doing when you're trying to win now. If you're trying to win now, pay the man his money, and then worry about the bill on that later. We saw the Saints doing this when Breeze was towards the end of his career, is just backloading all the contracts, spreading it out. And yes, it puts you in, the cap space wilderness in 3 or 4 years, but you're not going to have Aaron Rodgers then anyways, and you're probably going to be looking for a rookie quarterback, and so you can kind of afford that. So we'll see what happens. As far as Hassan Reddick goes, man, I think, and it's unfortunate that it's come to this, but I think the team you got to keep an eye on is going to be the Lions. And so obviously, Aiden Hutchinson, devastating injury. Wish him all the best, man. Guy was having an incredible year. And, hopefully he, gets healthy, gets back. Obviously, that tibia fibula break, it's one of the nastiest looking injuries you can have. I've seen it in person, thankfully, not on myself, but it's a nasty injury, and he's out. And so, you know, similar with the Jets, the Lions. I mean, you got to look at for a different reason. You got to look at your season as like, we can win this. The NFC looks like it is wide open, and so if I'm the Lions, Hassan Reddick is probably a guy I'm going to be looking at. Um, Similarly to, we talked about Davante, obviously getting shipped from the Raiders. Max Crosby is another guy. Looks like the Raiders are looking to offload. And I would think that the Lions will probably be at the head of both teams' lists as far as on the phone already trying to work out something to get a pass rusher to replace what Aiden was doing. Obviously, it's going to be hard to replace a guy who looked like he might have been in the lead for Defensive Player of the Year at this point. But, I mean, even if you can get 80%, 90% of that, it's huge because that defense in the back is a little bit vulnerable. Pause. But, yeah, the secondary is a little bit vulnerable. And so with that, you aren't able to generate a pass rush. That defense that's looked good this year all of a sudden doesn't look good. And now you go from, hey, they might be the top team in the NFC to they're right there with everybody else. And arguably probably not the number one, number two, or number three team that we're looking at coming out of the NFC. But what they did on Sunday, my goodness. So hold on now. That was one of the most embarrassing performances from a standpoint of one team embarrassing another that I've ever seen. First of all, if you're the Cowboys, I mean, they've talked about it prior to the game. The Cowboys didn't do nothing. They were just playing the football game. Refs made a call. It is what it is. But they were coming for this game. And they wanted to show you that last season was a fluke and they weren't going to let it come down to one call. And right out the gate, you knew it because they came in and declared their linemen eligible just like they did in the game they lost. Or they say they did in the game they lost last year. So from that point forward, you should know you need to be locked in. There is zero reason that you shouldn't be ready for an absolute playoff game atmosphere, which you should be ready for anyways, because right now you're not looking great and you need wins. So obviously Lions jump out on them and it just got ridiculous. They're throwing passes to offensive linemen who were covered, giving them jump balls in the end zone. They're running a hook and ladder play with their offensive linemen. They're having O linemen spread out far right, running. Well, he didn't run a route, but he was supposed to run a route. Like, they were out there to embarrass you, and they did. They embarrassed you. And so, again, it not only is it embarrassing from a standpoint of like they embarrassed you this game, they also told you and they told the entire NFL, you don't got to worry about the Cowboys. You don't have to worry about them. We're going to run peewee football plays. We're going to run stuff that you see in Mad. Like, we're going to do just ridiculous things because we don't even view you on the same level as us. And if you don't think that's going to show every other team in the NFL that you're a joke of a team, you're mistaken. Because if I'm playing it as a basketball player, if I'm sitting there in a crowd, right, and I know that we got some team, or if I'm sitting at home watching the TV, and I know we got to play a team that is I'm watching. And I'm watching them play, and the other team is throwing up hook shots from half court, blowing you out. I'm like, oh man, I'm gonna have 40. I'm gonna have 40. Like, you're not a real team. And it's not like the Lions are like some world beater team. Like, they're good. They're a really good team. But it's not like everyone in the NFL is like, whoa, the Lions are the favorites. Like, no one's beating them. So it just sends a message from just an entire league standpoint that you are a team that we don't have to worry about. And, with that, it's, we saw it boil over, man. Jerry Jones, in typical Jerry Jones fashion with the Cowboys, he gets on his radio show, not his radio show, but the radio show he always does every week. And, they ask him things that a radio show should ask, as far as, hey, you said you were all in during the off season, and you didn't spend any money. You said you were all in. You didn't go after any players. Your big moves of the offseason were giving Dak $60 million a year 2 days before the season started, getting CD done, and that's it. That's all you did. That's going all in for you. And, it's so to the radio show, they ask him that, like, do you see yourself going on? Like, do you regret that? And he goes off on him, says that, he'll get him fired. And this is obviously a guy who's that loss, he felt the embarrassment of it, because look, for what you think or don't think about Jerry Jones, he is all about his team, and he is all about the Cowboys. Maybe too much in a sense, but that's what you get with Jerry Jones. And so he snapped. And you saw it after the game when they talked about Mike McCarthy being fired, and he, asking the rhetorical, do you think I'm an idiot? Why would you even ask me that? So you're starting to see everything kind of boil over in Dallas. And Jerry isn't really typically a guy who fires a coach midseason. I don't think whatever coach you bring in, if you did fire him, I don't think there's anything you can do with that team. It's so entirely dependent on Dak and CD playing at an A+ level every single game to win, that it's just not sustainable. And so it's tough when, your owner is also the GM, is also, your PR manager is also, the face of your franchise. And so who does it fall on? Because I promise you, Jerry's not going to fire himself, and he's not going to bring in somebody else to run the team for him like a normal organization would do. And the people that we have seen him bring in is family or friends of family. And somebody drew a really great comparison as far as from the Cowboys to the Lakers. And it's true. You see the same thing with the Lakers, where they're very insular. They keep everything, in connection with the team is who we're going to hire. But because we want control over the whole team, top down. And so from a Cowboys point of view, and I've said it about the Lakers, is they run it like a mom and pop shop. And we saw it with Jerry this year, even as far as in not wanting to spend too much in free agency and, only getting friends and family to come work for him. That's something you see in a small family business. Not one of the biggest brands, if not the biggest sports brand in the U.S., in the world. And so obviously the Cowboys are going to have a lot of questions they got to answer. Jerry Jones, I don't think it's going to get any easier for him until you start winning. And I can't see this Cowboys team winning at a consistent level anytime soon, anytime this year, really. They've shown that that's just not the kind of team they are, and not the kind of team they're built as. But moving from a team clearly struggling to a team that is rolling, and man, Baker and the Bucks. Look, shout out to Joey. You called it, man. Baker's Baker and the Bucks are rolling. Baker is cooking, leading the league in touchdowns, looking like he's a top 2 to 3 MVP candidate right now. And I mean, when you look at them, they have the one game against the Falcons. It could have gone. That team could very easily be 5-1 and looking like one of the best teams in the league. Well, they are looking like one of the best teams, but record reflecting what they are. So, I mean, Baker obviously out there with the talent they have on offense and Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, their running back whose name I can't remember at the time, but everybody playing well. They got Otten, that tight end, playing well. Baker is slinging it. The defense is playing well. That Bucks team, man, I said the Falcons were the team that I thought was going to be the team that wins that division and the best team in that division. They got a win. Didn't look as good. That Bucks, man, they have me rethinking my pick for that division. I'm going to stick with the Saints, or that's not the Saints. I'm going to stick with the Falcons because that was my pick. But man, that Bucks team looks serious, and it looks like it could do some damage in the playoffs. And again, I'll keep reiterating it, man. That NFC is wide open. And so, do the Baker and the Bucks if they keep it up? Because I don't think, obviously, maybe you don't get MVP level Baker. We talked about it with Darnold last week. Maybe you don't get MVP level Darnold or Baker the whole year. But I don't see a drop off, like a major drop off coming from Baker. I think he's comfortable in that offense now with the weapons they have playing well. They look like a team that could do some serious damage this season and be a team that, ball bounces the right way in a couple games. Some teams get hit with some, unfortunate injuries or something. They're a team that, who knows, finds themselves in the conference championship game, maybe the Super Bowl, and, kind of just see where it goes from there. But, man, keep cooking, Baker. And, again, good call from Joey, man. Like, definitely give you a shout out for that one. And then finally, man, let's go from, a team that's cooking like Baker and the Bucks to a team that is disappointing. And y'all know I'm going to talk about, know who I'm going to talk about with the team. Man, we got to talk about that Eagles-Browns game. I'm not going to worry too much about the Browns because they're the Browns. And basically irrelevant as far as the NFL is concerned. And maybe, I was going to say anywhere outside of Cleveland, but they might even be irrelevant in Cleveland. And so, obviously, they got a good defense. It's not what it was last year, but a good defense. And so, there's that. But y'all know what time it is. We're going to talk about the Eagles. And so, first of all, let's just start with, in my opinion, that was, you look at a team like, I'm trying to think of, so let's say the Ravens week 1, maybe. I know there was another game this year. We can even look at the Commanders. The Commanders this week, right? You lose the game, but you look good losing it. And you come out of the game like we lost, but it's a good loss. Like, we saw some things that worked. We know we have a guy, like, we know we have the quarterback, or, we played well and ball just didn't bounce our way. Joey talked about it last week in relation to one of the games of it's a good loss. Well, if you can have a good loss, that means you can have a bad win. And for the Eagles and the Eagles against the Browns, that might be the worst win I have ever seen. I know there's been some bad wins this year, but that might be the worst. You are playing a Browns team who's, again, they're starting Deshaun Watson at quarterback, so they're basically not starting a starting level quarterback. You have a team that you are coming off a bye week. You have an offensive head coach, and your first 2 possessions are 2 punts. You don't score in the first quarter, which is a running theme because you haven't scored in the first quarter all year, which means the first quarter, that's all your scripted plays. Like, that should be where scoring is the easiest. If you're a decent coach, you should those first few drives that are all scripted, you should have easy plays, easy scores, whether touchdowns, field goals, something. You have not scored in the first quarter. And for a team that's got A.J. Brown, Davante Smith, Saquon Barkley, Jalen Hurts, that offensive line, Jahan Dotson is the third receiver, that is unacceptable. And so, again, you have an offensive coach. You always come out flat on offense. You have, again, I wasn't a fan of Kellen Moore. If Kellen Moore is the one scripting those, probably not the best hire. And so, regardless, we've had Sirianni come out and say, oh, no, on bad things. And, I'll give this one thing to him because I talked about it earlier with Rodgers is, constantly blaming other people. But you have Sirianni coming out whenever any kind of bad play or bad scheme, anything like that is brought up to him in a post game, he always takes credit for it. He did it this last game over one of the defenses they were in. He said, oh, that was I called that. Which, okay, you're the head coach. I'd like you taking responsibility. If not for the fact that Vic Fangio, the same day, was asked the same question, asked, hey, does Sirianni make those calls? And he goes, absolutely not. So again, it's just another case of Sirianni looking just so unqualified for being where he is. But you have the offensive struggles in the first quarter. You kind of squeak the win out because if you don't, my goodness, against the Browns, with how much more talented you are, that's embarrassing. It's an embarrassing win, honestly. And again, it's just the offense last year looked elementary. You bring in a new OC in Kellen Moore, the offense still looks elementary. It's either hand the ball off to Saquon, Jalen running it, or deep ball throws. That's the whole offense. Like, chuck it up for A.J. Brown, chuck it up for Davante Smith. So, eventually, with two OCs, two elementary-looking offenses, that's going to fall on the head coach some as well, especially when it's his side of the ball, even though he's not play calling. And so now we really got to get to the whole issue out of that game because, you win. Great. Probably saved your job for another week because like me and Joey had said last week, you lose to the Browns, you're probably fired right after the game. But instead, you squeak out a 4-point win against the Browns. And right after the game, you're talking trash to the crowd. Only problem is the game is in Philly. And he's talking trash to Eagles fans. Granted, yes, they are chanting "Fire Nick." To me, that says one thing for sure is that he heard that the whole game. Now, I have been in crowds, I've played in games where they are chanting whatever. I don't think I ever remembered, unless it was and basketball's a little bit different because the proximity of a player in basketball to somebody in the crowd in basketball can be 2 feet. This was far. And usually the chanting and everything doesn't really register as far as while you're in the game. Clearly, though, Sirianni was hearing it. And if he's hearing it, it means that can affect him. And so that's my first issue with it. My second issue is, why are you going at your home team fans? You want to know a surefire way to not have the crowd on your side? To talk trash to them. after you win, saying, giving them this, like, oh, let me hear you. What were you saying now? You won by 4 to the Browns. Now, if you would have came out and stomped them 45-10, 40-10, 35-10, you know what? I wouldn't have liked it. Still wouldn't have liked it. But I could understand you doing it then. But to squeak out a win against one of the, if not the worst team in the NFL, outside of maybe the Patriots and Panthers, for you to do that is embarrassing. And, I know the big thing came out as far as, in his post-game press conference, which he brought his kids to, because, you need that little shield from the media, from the hard questions. I get it. But in the post game, he's talking about, oh, well, we met with the team and, they said they wanted me to get back to my emotions and being emotional on the sidelines and, getting back to my fire and everything. And it's like, yeah, you know what? I get that. But not to the home team crowd. Now, if that means, after a touchdown, you're hitting people in the chest, slapping the helmets, getting hyped, or you're running down the sideline. Yeah, I get that. That's getting back to being the emotional, like high energy guy. It's not talking trash to your hometown team. Like if you were to ask any of those players, Jalen Hurts, whoever, hey, you said you wanted Sirianni to get back to being his fiery, emotional self. What does that mean for you? I don't think the answer of talking trash to our hometown crowd would have ever come out. And yet, Jalen at the end of it covered it up. Hey, that's what we asked him to do. We want to be more fired because that's what Jalen does. Great on the mic. Again, we never even heard anything but support for Sirianni, even though reports came out later that clearly they did not have a good relationship. So Jalen's always going to be professional. He's always going to give you the right answers at the podium. But it's just such a lack of common sense to think they want me to be more fiery. I should go at the crowd for our team when we beat the Browns by 4. It just makes no sense. And so obviously today he comes out and apologizes. Oh, I need to be better. I need to, my emotion shouldn't be channeled in that way. It should be channeled into getting the team ready. So, no, you don't say. You don't say. That's how you should be channeling them. Again, just a total lack of common sense. And let's be honest, the reason that came out and the reason he got up and did that apology in his presser is because Howie Roseman probably had a phone call with him 5 minutes or 10 minutes right after he left the podium post game, or had him in his office the next morning. And so again, it's just the stuff with Sirianni. A lot of the Eagles fans that I know, friends, family, they were on the Sirianni. They liked him. They've flipped. And it's just a continuous thing with him, man. He just keeps giving you reasons to not like him and to not think that he's equipped to handle this job. And so we'll see what happens. Again, I thought they should have fired him. I think if he was on a hot seat before, a win probably gets you off it. It makes it a little cooler. I don't think this win made it cooler at all. Might even have made it a little hotter with everything as far as that happened not in the game. So we'll see what happens, man. Obviously, as my team, I'm going to root for them. I somehow am going to have to root for them winning and playing bad enough that Sirianni gets fired. But I don't think that's something we're going to see this year. But I guarantee you, in anything short of us winning a Super Bowl, I can't see him being back next year. So look, I appreciate all y'all watching. Again, we're going to be back here on Saturday. As always, like, subscribe. We are on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify. So please like and subscribe. I appreciate all y'all's support, and we'll see you next time.